All right. Good morning. Welcome to another Random Code stream. In this stream, what I'm going to do is at least one feature, and maybe two, possibly three. Depends on how much time it takes me to get some of this stuff done. So before I move on any farther, let's get the music going. I've got shuffle off. Yes, because I don't want to shuffle, but I do have repeat on. Well, let's play all. Okay. So I haven't done, I think, a lot with this library in past streams, but it's one that I actually kind of like, and it's a small thing, but I think it's kind of a helpful thing. So if I go look at the docs, basically what you can do is you can put this attribute on. This is a source generator. You can put an attribute on a type and say AutoDeconstruct, and what it will do is it will either add a deconstruct method if this is a partial type to the type, or it will make an extension method. Either way, what you end up with is the ability to deconstruct that type, and you didn't have to write that deconstructor yourself. You can just say auto deconstruct and it's done. So you don't have to figure out like which properties we want to make, whatever. You can just put that attribute on it. And what's nice about this attribute is you could do potentially build a refactoring to look at the type and say, add a deconstruct method, but that would be based on what the type is currently defined as. With this source generator, if you added another property, you wouldn't have to go back to the deconstruct method and update it yourself manually. This would just automatically do it, and does automatically do it. So it's a fun little example showing how source generators work, but it's missing some updates that I need to do that I've been doing in some of my other source generator projects, and splitting things out a little bit. That I'll do in the future. This is going to be done all in a 2.0 release, because what I'm about to do today is going to break current functionality, and I think in the right way. So in any event, so I got to do that package reconstruction, moving some things into different projects to have a better separation of concerns. In any event, the thing I'm going to work on in this stream, at least to start, is removing a feature. Don't allow assembly auto deconstruct. So what I have in there right now is the ability to just put an attribute at the top of your, not the top, but top of your assembly. Make an assembly level attribute that says find all types in your project and make make deconstructors for them if they don't already have one. If there is one already there, then auto deconstruct doesn't do anything. And I've heard from a couple people, I've mentioned this library in a couple of the Discord Roslyn channels, and I've gotten some negative feedback on this, saying that this is, one, probably not performant, because this means that the source generator has to do an assembly level search on everything. It's also going to find cases like if you have records automatically do a deconstructor for you. So it's going to have to look at that type, do the search on that, and see does it have it there or not. This is something that you should opt into per type. And I went, okay, I was going to do some research and see how much performance that would take. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, this is probably a feature that reaches too far. So I'm going to remove it. And that also means that there is another attribute that says no deconstruct or something like that. And I'm going to remove that one as well, because that one basically says to this attribute definition, I don't want you to create a deconstruction on it. So again, I think the consistent way is if you want to have a deconstructor on a type, put this on there, put auto deconstruct on it, and you're done. And you don't have to think about updating it or doing anything after that point. And then if you have records, you could put it on a record, but there would be no point of doing that. As I'm talking, I'm kind of wondering if I should have an analyzer that says, if you find a deconstructor and you put auto deconstruct on it, you should make a warning or something like that. Actually, that's probably a good idea. Let me put that in as a new issue. Add an analyzer to warn the user if deconstruct exists. So we'll say if someone does this, and we say, let's go back to our example. I have to go to the overview document because I have one in there. Yeah, like this. So we'll grab that one. And as much as I love tabs, I have to admit, having them in Markdown is not necessarily ideal. It does tend to push them too far over. So, and then if we would do auto deconstruct, warn the user that the attribute that, or just say warn the user that a deconstructor already exists. And that's it. So we'll put it in 2.0. We'll add an enhancement label. And we'll say create. And so then the user has a choice. They can say, well, either I remove the deconstructor and let the attribute in the source generator handle that for me, or I remove the attribute. But do one or the other. Don't do both. Good morning, Mitch. Or for you, it would be good evening. I remember the formula. I was actually thinking about this morning. If Mitch showed up, it's 3 hours ahead, and then switch AM to PM or vice versa. And then I thought, God, what happens when we have like daylight savings time kick in and out, and then I don't get that in America, and I don't know if it's in other countries, but I know that's just been a staple for all the years I've lived in America. Is in the winter you fall back and spring ahead. That's the way to remember it. So in October you fall back an hour, and then in the spring, in like March now, you spring ahead an hour. I really hate that. I wish we would just abolish that and get rid of it. It's annoying. So just keep it the same time. Or make it like 30, like make one point where you go back 30 or ahead 30, 30 or whatever it would be, and then say that's it from this point on. Enough of that garbage. All right, speaking of getting rid of garbage, let's go back to the task at least at hand. That's the one I want. So we'll get rid of that tab and that tab. Okay. So this one is going to be probably a little bit easy because we just need to remove 2 attributes and then fix tests and all that other stuff. And then this assembly types collector visitor, we can probably get rid of this too because we don't need to look for types anymore either. So actually, let me make some notes here. All right, let's get rid of some of this. Yeah. Okay, so what types should we remove? We want to probably get rid of this one. And then no. Is type excluded? I'm not sure what this one is. I think there's a feature I have on the attribute here. Hold on, let me get assembly on AutoDeconstruct. Let's put the right little tick marks. Yeah, there's search for extension methods. Oh, is type excluded? I bet. Where is this used? So yeah, if you make, you can put on the attribute, I want to say search for extension methods. That's off by default, but it's possible that somewhere within your compilation, somebody's created an extension method that does the deconstruction already. So that makes it harder to find. Again, I don't have that on by default because that's more computationally expensive, but if you really want to do it, I do have it on. So that is a type that we do want to keep. So we don't want to get rid of that one. Okay. Yeah, and then this code is going to drop out because we're going to see the target symbol is IAssembly symbol, and it's going to drop out, and then it's going to come back in because I want to have the ability to do deconstruction on any type, even if it's one that you don't own. That's another feature I'm going to be working on in the very near future. So, all right. So I think I know which types I want to remove. Maybe. There's going to be some work in here. You'd think it'd be simple. I thought it would be simple, but it's not quite that simple. Okay, so let's do the thing where I make sure I have my... Nope. Up here, AutoDeconstruct, docs, notes. I like doing this when I'm working on features or issues, because sometimes it's nice to have my thoughts all in my head and what needs to be done where. Okay, so let's just start deleting stuff. You should also put in here and say, we could do this. Work to do. Types/code to remove, update to not support assembly level searching. Okay. Okay. So the first thing is we can get rid of no auto deconstruct. That's gone. And we'll have to update tests as needed. So hey, we're done with one thing on the list. Yay! On auto deconstruct attribute. Actually, this is going to be a fun one. Because the right thing to do within this piece of work is to remove the fact that we no longer support at the assembly level. Okay. We're going to come back and then add it back in, but for a very specific case. So I like that they have spelling checks here. Nice. Small thing, but a nice thing. Whoops, I must have fat fingered a slash. Okay, so we'll do that. Assembly types collector visitor, gone. I'm not sure which things are needed now, which things aren't. Yeah. Okay. Fully qualified name sounds like something we would always want. To camel case. Actually, no, we can't. That's right. Yeah, we can't use generated regex here because that's in 7 and we can't access that in .NET Standard 2.0. Hopefully there's some hope that maybe in .NET 10, well, there's already work in flight to do some things with SDKs and versions and references that will actually positively affect Roslyn-based projects like source generators, because you won't be forced to support you won't be forced to only do .NET Standard 2.0. You can choose to say, I reference .NET 10. Now, what that does is potentially limit you from other clients that are still on older versions. But frankly, I don't care. At least you now have the ability to reference a modern version of .NET in your Roslyn code, and that's going to be so nice. That's going to be so nice when that finally occurs. So it may not happen in 10, but apparently there's work in flight to, because it also affects other things, not just the specific thing in Roslyn. Anyway, okay, so back on track. We remove that too. Now, whoops, no, don't do that. Let's go into the builder is still fine because we still build the same way regardless. And actually what I want to do too is say manage, you get packages for solution. Let's see if there's any updates that we can grab. Of course there are. We haven't touched this library in a while. Yeah, that all looks good. I accept. Okay, now I also want to bring up rocks. And I am changing all of my solutions to use the SLNX format now. It's so much nicer. It's so much better. That's the way forward. Get rid of your SLN files. Have you seen that there's a 5.0 preview for many of the Roslyn packages? No, I haven't. Not sure what the changes are. Been a while since they did a major release like that. Yeah, I actually didn't notice. I've not been trying to do preview land yet. But yeah, I'm going to just leave it at that. I might be ending up saying something that I shouldn't say. Actually, hold on. I forget that when I do games, I put my camera up here. When I'm doing coding, I should move it back down there. Okay. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that in the future Visual Studio. So, but I really have not been looking at like the new version of .NET. I did for rocks, and I just did a branch where I did like the preview version, .NET 10, ran everything passed. All the tests I do for code generation passed with any new library that it found in preview version. So that's good, but that doesn't mean that, you know, as more libraries kick in that do certain things in certain ways, for me to be able to handle that correctly. But that's a different side issue. What I want to look at is, how do I declare this? Yeah, let's put in this AutoDeconstruct. And where do you put that? Property group. Yeah. And then we also want to say testing platform. Okay. And then we also want to do that in the integration test one. Okay. So let's go back to the generator. And I think, so yeah, this goes away because we're no longer targeting that. And we're just going to say if it's this, because I kind of know I'm going to move forward with coming back to being assembly level targeting, but that's a different story. So what still breaks in this assembly? Nothing. Okay, good. Let's look at our, we no longer have that as a need for testing. What is this? The typer namespace testing does not exist in the namespace. It must be something with what I just updated. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Hold on. I never changed. What do I do in rocks? Yeah, I say target framework is 9. I think I also say that here. Yeah, target framework is 9. Let's clean. Let's actually close this and bring it up again. I don't know if something got a little messed up. And let's just say build that again. Okay, now more, yeah. I think it was just in a weird state that it got kind of, well, that's still there. Auto registration, the typer namespace testing. Oh. Yeah, I remember now. Whoops. If you're going to use the new testing platform stuff, you need to reference the new testing platform stuff. Oopsie. But that should be that's SDK, right? Yeah, unless no, I updated all the libraries. I am a little bit confused here. No warn, root namespace, test support, yeah. Unless, wait, am I reading this? No, that is tests. That is the one I'm building. What am I missing here? This is a very simple project, so this is odd that this is coming up this way. I wonder if it's one of these cases where there is actually an error, but I don't think there is. Okay. We can actually update that real quick while I'm here before I forget. And use 904. Actually, I think 905 is the current one. .907 actually. Okay. Let's go all out. But that still doesn't explain this weird error I'm getting with typer namespace testing does not exist in the namespace Microsoft. Are you missing an assembly reference? I don't believe I am. Let's... Yeah, I don't know why it shows those up. That's annoying. I don't understand. This is weird. This is unexpected. Directory packages props. Actually, let's not use rocks for this. Let's go back to Transpire, because that's a smaller one. Rocks' package props is unbelievably huge. Cofix workspaces, and then test SDK 17.14.1. I mean, so we're grabbing that one. We have 5. This is weird. I don't understand why it's screaming like this. It shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I've got enable net and unit runner, testing platform. I don't think you need the assembly names or anything like that in there. I guess I'll just add them, but I'm like 99.9% sure that is not the problem here. Just no red namespace. Yeah, this code was generated by Microsoft Testing Platform MS Build. If I come into Transpire and I say build, everything works. I am really confused. There should be... And I don't know... I'm honestly completely... I guess... Let's just look for this. Testing platform. Yeah, 2016 would be way too early. That doesn't help at all. This is 3 years ago. I don't think this would be a thing at all. I hate unexpected stuff like this. There should be no reason why this doesn't work. Nope. Why do I feel like I'm the first one that... That doesn't help at all either. Trying to compile our test news to know. I'm just, I don't, I'm really confused by this. Updating this should not cause any issues. Yeah, both of those assemblies are having the same problem. And I don't know why. Is there anything different between... I just have a no warn in there. That's the only difference. Analysis mode, that shouldn't matter. I hate being stuck like this on a stream, but I'm really confused. Let's just turn these off for a second. Yeah, now it succeeds. If I uncomment this and I say that, now that succeeds. If I uncomment this, now it fails. Well, in the interest of time, let's just do that. Because I just want to be able to at least run the damn tests, you know. Yeah, 2 fail. It's not, that's not too surprising that I might get a couple failures in there. Let's actually do that as well. Okay, so fun stuff. Fun stuff. What's failing? Let's just look at the failures. Attribute. Yes, well, that's correct. Generate assembly level. Nope. And then that one also will go away. Okay. So now let's run tests there again. And they all pass. Let's look at integration tests here. What are we getting a help here for? Consider using, this is a new one. Consider using assert enter multiple scope statement instead of assert multiple async. Do you have documentation on this? Yes, you do. Good. Prior to 4.2, developers use 2 separate methods to group multiple assertions. This approach, while functioning, has limitations, in particular on unnecessary context capture and limited static analysis due to the use of lambda expressions. A new API was using assert enter multiple scope, multiple assertions for sync and async. So you basically use a using assert. All right, well, it knows better than I do, so whoops. Whoops. The formatting's a little funky when it does it, but that's okay. Actually, hold on, wait a minute. Good, it does have. It's just going to be on this one. Okay, I didn't know if there was any in. And it shouldn't be, because most of the time I just do this test assistant thing and let it succeed or fail. Okay. So let's do the shut down and start up again approach. And they all pass. So we can say 18 removed support for assembly level auto deconstruction. Push that. Yeah, this is now just the weirdness that sometimes happens when you're referencing things. See, now it just went away because magic. Yeah, I really don't know what this multiple scope does. And arguably you could Oh, I see what it's doing. So you're just... Yeah, that's interesting. I've never... Because what is multiple scope? It's got to be... Yeah, return to disposable. But you're not capturing like the scope. Which makes sense because you wouldn't need it anyway. So... I don't know if I've ever really done this with a using statement. Huh. That's interesting. Anyway. Things are rolling in my head with that idea, but never mind that. Okay, so I think we've actually addressed everything we need to do. Update. Yeah, we did that. We did that. So, and it's funny because I never had a test in here to say look at all types and do it, because it would have been a little bit hard to do as an integration test. I would have needed a separate integration test project where I had multiple types in it, and then have a test to say, make sure like all 2 or 3 types now have the ability to do a deconstruction. So yeah, I never really had tests around it anyway, but I like this better. I do it. It was something I struggle with, but I think at the end of the day, this is the right thing to do. So I do my change log. I did do that. So let's just say 18 updated notes, time for a merge. No, it's not time for a merge yet. I need to actually go into my docs. Can I pull this back? No, it's going to stay that way. Like I said, I love tabs. I'm team tabs person, but admittedly in Markdown, because there's no way to like annotate in a Markdown file, as far as I know, to say treat the rendering of a tab to be like 2 spaces or something like that. So we might as well go in and change these while I'm here. Because again, I feel like with tabs, you're giving the user the choice as to how much you really want to have as a space, the amount of space there with tabs. But with Markdown, it makes the choice. I think it does like a 4 space, and I think that's too much. Oh yeah, and then I can marking types, and the library generates this. And then AutoDeconstruct, blah, blah, blah. The thing I really want to do, though, is remove the documentation that talks about, as you can see down below there, the assembly level support, which will come back, but yeah, and then we don't need that either. Although we still have this here, so let's keep that. Let's do extension method searching. So we can AutoDeconstruct will search a target type to see if existing deconstruct method exists. User may want to opt in to a search to look through the entire assembly for deconstruct extension methods. By default, it's turned off, so it's not common. It creates search and it's potentially computationally expensive. And so now we just have to change the example so that we put it like that. And now we need to go back to our, okay. Documentation is important because then all the LLMs can consume it and make you smarter. In this case, AutoDeconstruct. So no code is generated. Search file also works. And then we just take that off. And then we take this whole section out because it's no longer needed. There. Let's just preview it real quick, see if it reads correctly. Oh, I didn't take marking types. Hold on, hold on. Marking types and extension method searching. Those are the only ones now that exist. Okay. There. Okay, cool. See, it was good to look at this. Yeah, this is just, that's literally what it constructs. So I'm going to leave that formatting there. All right. I think that's good. So let's come back into here. Updated docs. Now time for a merge. All right, so let's do that quick. Manage branches. Wait, why did it do that? Let's merge 18 into... Yeah. And I can get rid of the 16. I don't know why I still have that local, because that has been merged already into main. So let's merge 18, merge it. Why are you jumping? Makes no sense. Push it. Okay. So now main has that. Let's get rid of these things. Delete that, delete that, delete that. Yes. And that. All right. And then we can come over here. And say this is done. All right. So refresh, because GitHub is not refreshing that. Okay, so how much time do I have left? I got not a busy day, but I have things to do today. We're meeting some friends for lunch at 11, and then we're having friends come over tonight for drinks, dinner, gaming, all that fun stuff. So I got some stuff to do around the house today, but we're not meeting them till 11, so I can probably start working on another feature. Which one do I want to do? I think it's the allow deconstruction any type, because now it's going to go right back to what not right back to what I removed, but right back to saying I can do this at the assembly level. Okay, and what this feature is intending to do is say, I want to be able to deconstruct any type, but allow it on any type, but like on any specific type that I pick. So maybe I want to add deconstruction on a string. Probably a stupid idea, but maybe I wanted to do that. And so I could pass this in there and then just say that's the target type. And then everything flows from that point on. Like if you look at the generator, excuse me. There we go. That here is where we're getting the for attribute with metadata name. We look for this, and we've been looking for it to be on a name type symbol. We're now going to have to go back to see if it's on the assembly. But then what we're going to do is so we say if the search is no, or if it's excluded, not excluded, then we actually get our model and we move on. What we're going to have to do in our case with the assembly is get the type symbol from the attribute that's passed in, And so this now becomes a little tricky because I got to make sure that I'm pulling out the value. But this is why I have tests, right? How many times have I said in a stream or in my free code session videos, which I am going to probably start doing that a little bit more in the future, get back to that again. I still want to stream like live stream coding, but specific targeted videos, I want to get back to doing that. So in any event, how many times have I said in streams or videos, write tests and test everything, because you never know when you're going to change something that might inadvertently affect something that you didn't think about. That's one of many reasons why you do testing. But in any event, I'm going to have to make sure that I have the constructor arguments spaced correctly. Because right now, I believe it's an optional one. Yeah, I don't want to make it a primary constructor. Go the hell away. And so I'm going to have to look at the 0th argument to be the type. Because that'd be the first optional that we want to do. And it would only be valid. Yeah. That's interesting. We would want to say if you're targeting a type, you should have not passed anything in to that type. That's actually a mistake. So let's go to our issues here again. Add an analyzer to warn the user. No. Go back. Edit. To warn the user of issues. So let's edit. So let's save that. And now let's edit this and say the first issue is this. If someone adds the attribute to a type that already has a deconstructor. The second issue is related to number 19. If a user specifies a type in the attribute and the attribute is not at the assembly level, that's a warning as well, as it will be ignored. So that's basically saying if I do something like this, type of customer, you know, that would be ridiculous to do. Why would you put it, or, you know, some type? It doesn't matter. At the assembly level. And even if it matched or not, it doesn't matter. Don't specify that value when you put AutoDeconstruct on a type. Okay. I think that makes sense. So that will be one that we come back to later. Come back to here. So all we have to do is at the assembly level is pull out that target type and then let everything flow from that point on. And then change this so that it actually works now. Yeah. All I need is a deck of cards. Okay. So let's make our branch. I don't know if I'll get finished with this in this stream, but that's okay. Okay, so if we go to the attribute now, we need to go back to saying this is okay. Right? Okay. But type, target type equals null. Oh, brain no worky. And this has no, yeah. So let's put in public type, target type. Gets the target type for auto deconstruction. Okay. Let's put the parameter in here. See, this is where it's like, I wanted to say must not be null when the attribute usage is on the assembly, because then you have to provide it. But there's no way, I think, with an assembly level attribute, like what target are you at? I don't think there's a context to say, where have I been declared on this instance? That's not the way it works. So specifies the type to add a method for. Note that this is ignored let's say remarks. Param ref target type is ignored if auto is declared for a type. If is declared at the assembly level, then target type must not be null. All right, and we will check that in the generator and say if it's at that level, then you have to specify the target type, and if you don't, then we could we could add that as an analyzer, because in the generator we don't want to fail, we just wouldn't do anything. But then the analyzer, we would tell people, hey, you've got to actually specify that. If not, see, I wish my phone, sometimes it goes into a mode where I can't like tell it to go landscape. It won't tip, and then I can't see what people have typed because this stupid heart thing is in the way. If not, then could you have skip the checks? Ugh. Why can't my phone do that? I don't know why it does that. It gets weird. Let's see if I can search system settings. Search. Rotate. No results found. Of course you rotate to landscape mode. But that's the home screen settings. That's not what I want. Yeah, I don't know why it won't do that. So, if not... This is really frustrating that my phone will not go into... And I use my phone to look at stream while I'm doing it. I've tried to use OBS to look at comments, and that really didn't quite work as well as I thought it would. Maybe I should go back and try to do that, because then I could see the comments in here, the chat. But anyway, there, well, at least I can see now. Would this work on open generics? If not, then you can have AutoDeconstruct attribute instead and skip all these checks. Would this work on open generics? I don't know. I have a generic test in here. So, yeah, it does. It does when you put it on an open generic, because then it will just, it puts, if it needs to put it anywhere, like it'll do the here, if this type was T, it will do all that stuff. With constraints, he puts a constraint on it. Multiple generics. There would never be a closed generic, because well, there won't be when you're doing it on a type, because you might derive from a type that is open generics, but you close them by specifying what the type would be. Or you have a type that just says open generics like this. And that all works. So what would happen if I have a type there? I think I want to leave it as is. But this leads to an interesting point. I think if you're going to do it this way and say I want to target a type, if it's an open generic, you can't specify it as an open, you can't close it. Like if, go back up here, just take the simple example. If I have a test of T, and now I have my generator attribute where this target type would be test of string. How would I, and I know where this is going to go, which is, well, the new extension everything is coming up, and that might actually make it easier to say what you're declaring a deconstruct. I mean, actually that would, if I'm thinking about that. So that's actually leading to another interesting aspect to this, which is with extension everything, the way you declare an extension method, the old way still works. The new way can still work on that, but you can say, I want to extend test a string. I want to extend test of open, test of T. And so that may make things interesting as a .NET 10 feature. I don't think, though, that that's going to change the way I want to do this. Like, I don't want to make the attribute generic, because we can support open types, and we should probably default to that. and not let you put in closed generics. If that makes sense. But with extension everything, that would also suddenly switch out what you could support. So maybe for 2.0, we leave it as you can only do open generics. But once .NET 10 rolls around, we could look at changing it to say, like the type that you pull out extensions on would just be the name of, for example, in this case, it would just be test extensions, right? Because what this does is exactly it takes out the this, and I think I have the code in here to handle duplicates. Like if there, for whatever reason, if your code already had a test extensions in there, then we would do test 2 extensions or test 3 extensions. We just keep, because it's really about what we're extending here. And so we could have a deconstruct, or we could have like the extensions for test of T, extensions for test of string, extensions for test of GUID, you know, whatever type we want to target. And then we'd have the deconstruct in there for each of those specific cases. That might be cool. That might be something that then we could support rather easily. And arguably, we could do it now. There's no reason why we couldn't. We could have a test extensions method here that allows you. We just haven't. Yeah, so this is actually leading to another interesting extension, no pun intended, to this feature, because up until this point, we've never had the ability to say target a specific type, like what I'm doing literally with this feature. And so that gets into what happens if you have an open generic or a closed generic. An open generic works just fine. A closed generic, where I would say like test string, well, now I'm saying I want to deconstruct, and I will no longer have this here. It'd be test space test of string self, and then these two things would be out string, which, yeah, that's an interesting. Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it. But it is actually, and because if I didn't acknowledge that and support that and handle that right now, that would be a problem. All right, so let's go to note taking. How do I handle closed generics correctly? So let's say I have, for example, say I've got that. Okay. But what I am doing is I'm saying assembly and then auto deconstruct, where the first optional argument I pass in is type of test of string. So now what I would want to do is I would need to generate this. Well, I've opened up a whole can of worms with this, haven't I? Because I'm already seeing something else. Which is this becomes string, this becomes string, this becomes string. Whoops. Well, actually, let's capture this as notes. Save as notes. I did make a branch, right? Yes, yeah, I did. No, this is Markdown. Why did you do that? Okay. But then what if I do this? Would I generate this? Would I generate this? And I think that would be legal. Single extension methods as soon as you first mentioned, but I'm not sure I'm gonna give you my usual scope creep. Yeah. But it's correct. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned this because it is the right thing to do here. And honestly, this would be bizarre, and I don't want to necessarily get into with the generator and trying to analyze, do you have an assembly level one? Do you have this one here? Do you know, this would be weird. Why somebody would do that, that would be odd. This would be really weird to run into. I may need to make the extension type partial. And I think I already have a story for that, or an issue. Well, okay, maybe my documentation is wrong. It wouldn't be, though, because this is the test. This is actually what it's doing. So why do I think partial is here? Like, I don't ever... Yeah, I don't ever use the word partial. Note that I'm not currently making the extension type partial, but that may be done already with 19. Because I may need to do that. In fact, I think I probably would. I may need to make the extension type partial. So both are generated separately. If that makes sense, what I just said. So what I'd actually end up with is partial. Does the partial go first? I don't remember. I think there is an order. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of just a document. So we always just use the name of the type. We don't care about the any open generics, and we just declare things the way we currently do, and then this would mash them all together into the right text extension type. And then that thing I mentioned here, I may not do this I may not really care about it. The thing is, right now, what I'm doing is when I'm building this, right. So I go through the generator, I get all the types, and I just say build it for that type. But I'm doing it in one file. I don't create separate files for the types. And that's why I have this issue here, which is what ends up showing up in the generated file is potentially a mash of things. Because I want to have the types in the same namespace as the type it's declared, as the namespace it's declared in. It just helps to reduce collisions. So, although it's not necessary, like I said, it's a tidier thing, but it's not necessary. But it may be necessary, yeah, to make them partials and handle each case individually. The fun of writing these things. I'm glad I'm doing this though, because I like these adventures in coding. It's fun to try to figure out how to handle this and put my head around this kind of stuff. So, but I think I want to wrap up this stream pretty quickly because, again, just other things to do today. So, with that, where do I want to leave this at today, though? So that I have a good model. I need to make the extension type partial. Allow open and closed generics. Before you close generic, ensure the holes are filled, just like I showed up in the top there. So we'd have to have a test of string here, but then this now becomes a string because that's what those properties would be on that type. I don't think you can do, I always forget this, but I don't think you can do a combination of an open and closed. You either have to say it's either a complete open generic or it's completely closed. If you're saying type of, you can't do partial, I believe. So we wouldn't have, we'd either have it defined as open or closed. Right. Okay, so lots of tests. Again, I don't know why that thing in the test project was causing that weird build issue before. That's a little disconcerting because it's worked not only here, but I'm doing that on my day job over there, and it works just fine. So I'm not sure why that's causing an issue. The fun of software development. But there's more work to be done here, and we just got to make sure that we're handling the cases correctly. The last thing, though, I want to do is real quick, as I was mentioning, but the attribute is this is ignored if it's on a type. But what I wanted to come back to before Mitch completely distracted me is, if we go to issues here, second issue is related to this. We need to edit this. The third issue is also related to 19. Sorry. No, don't. But I'm teasing you, but I'm not complaining at all. It's been good that you threw these things my way because it definitely has made me think about, what about this? If a user specifies the attribute at the assembly level, it must provide the type. The generator will ignore this kind of declaration, but the analyzer will raise this as an error. Not a warning, it's an error. You have to specify that in this case. So if you did something like assembly, AutoDeconstruct, this would be an error. This is technically a warning. I almost think it should be an error. In the case where you're putting it on a type, you should not be declaring a type in the attribute itself. I think that's a mistake. This one is arguably a warning. That's an error. And there's no point in doing this. The third is also related to number 10. The user specifies the attribute at the assembly level and must provide the type. The generator will ignore this kind of declaration, but the analyzer will raise this as an error. Perfect. Okay, so when we're building this feature out, we'll just, in a generator, like I said, we're going to look at that we're going to look at that constructor parameter and say, you know, if it's not null, then we move on with the rest of the work. The analyzer will be responsible for raising that as an issue. All right, cool. So I don't know really what we've done here. We're definitely broken the build. Added target type to attribute. This breaks things, but it will get fixed. Which again, I'm fine with. When I'm doing my own separate branch and if I do things that cause things to break, that's okay. It's just when you get to the point where like you do a PR or if I'm doing a merge here, at that point, everything better build, all tests better pass. That's when it matters. So, all right. I think at this point I'm going to stop. I will probably, if I don't drink too much tonight, I probably will do another coding stream tomorrow morning and continue on with this work and see if I can make more progress with this and potentially get this one done, because then I want to definitely move to this analyzer thing right away and start putting in that stuff as well. This is fun. I like revisiting projects like this. So I want to thank everybody for watching, whether you did it live or you're doing it in the future. Either way, thank you very much for watching it. If you have not subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. Would greatly appreciate it. Trying to get to 5,000 subscribers now, so any new subscription helps. If you're already subscribed, I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Again, the next time I'll be doing a stream will be a coding stream. Will probably be tomorrow morning or maybe Monday or Tuesday morning. We'll see. I will also be doing some playthrough streams tomorrow afternoon with Call of the Sea. I've really been enjoying that game, so I'm going to continue doing some play in that game tomorrow afternoon. But with that, I am done with this stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.